Unscripted, unshackled, uncouth.
What you're about to hear is for more mature audiences only.
It's Miguel and Holly, Uncensored.
Welcome to Miguel and Holly Uncensored. It is our podcast that we do on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We drop it at noon, but you can also always watch it go down on the Miguel and Holly Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I feel like we've had a really cool string of guests lately talking about a bunch of different issues.
Agreed, across the board, and all really interesting, helpful stuff.
And I think this right here is without a doubt going to be someone that you've seen a lot on national TV, but also from the Carolinas as well. We would like to welcome from the Today Show, Craig Melvin.
Hey!
Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Miguel, Holly, thank you. And you should know I only accepted the invitation to come on because they told me I could use profanity.
Use all of it.
Yes.
It's so funny because I feel like as broadcasters, like you obviously on national television every day and then us on radio here in Charlotte, you have that on-air person that
There's
is
a filter.
Right.
Yes.
It's you.
Yes.
Then when the cameras and the microphones are off, that's not on TV or on the radio, a few extra colorful words come out.
I would agree.
That.
I would agree.
Now you have had such a really cool trajectory. We were doing a little research on you and how you started at the TV station in Columbia as a teen journalist. Can you just talk about how do you have those what the F is my life when you go from that to now you're on the Today Show?
Right.
Talk about that.
Every morning I pinch myself. No, you guys did your homework. That's true. I was an Our Generation reporter at WIS Television in Columbia, South Carolina. The spirit of the Carolinas. That was the tagline back then. You guys were probably. Actually, now that I'm doing the math in my head, there's a good chance you weren't even born. But
you are very, very nice. But
I was at home one day after I think that I was in the 10th grade, and I was watching TV, and a commercial pops up, and they're looking for a reporter in high school to sort of tell stories that would be relevant to young people. So if you got selected, you would do stories on teenagers and SAT preparation, or teenagers and sex, and teenagers and smoking, and all that's. It was their attempt back then to try and reach a younger demographic. Since then, we've come to realize that demographic doesn't exist, so we don't even try. But back then we tried.
Right.
So long story short, I saw a commercial advertising for the position, and I hopped in my dad's 1973 Pontiac Le Mans, and I drove to Richland Fashion Mall back then, and I auditioned, and clearly I guess there weren't a lot of qualified applicants that particular year.
Or you were great.
No, that was a weak pull. So I did that for 2 years in high school. And I sort of fell in love with that. I fell in love with storytelling. I fell in love with interviewing. I fell in love with just all of it. I just fell in love with the energy of the newsroom. So I got started at an early age. Got lucky.
What was, do you think, the hardest part of realizing that this is what you want to do with your life since you fell into it? Because when you go into these positions, in our audience that we call them the Platypus Posse that listen to this podcast, we do go a lot of behind the scenes about the radio industry and what it's like for us. And they always say, we love when y'all talk about that, which is why I think shows like The Morning Show is so popular, because people are so fascinated about the other hours that happen. But what do you think has been the hardest part on this journey and continuing on it, working in local TV and then network TV?
Oh, that's a good question, Miguel. You may have a future in this. Honestly, a couple hard parts. First of all, I'm going to let a little secret out here, because I think I play the part decently on television. I'm not a morning person. I don't really do well before I'd say maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Mhm.
And at the Today Show, you got to be up pretty early. So that has taken some getting used to. I'd say another hard part, sometimes for me at least, is just the sheer volume of the work. A lot of times people think, oh, you're on for 2 or 3 hours and that's it, you go home. I've got a 9-year-old and I've got a 6-year-old. I've got a wife who enjoys seeing me from time to time. But I have a job that requires me to, even when I'm not on television, I'm shooting a story, or I'm in a meeting, I'm on a phone call, I'm in a meeting, I'm on an airplane, or I'm in a meeting. So the demands of the job can be a bit taxing for someone like myself, who, if left to his own devices, would be in his basement with the bourbon, like watching Law and Order. I think another part of it, and this is, and it's funny because as I get older, I find this to be truer and truer. I don't really like people.
Man, this business will do that to you. Won't it?
Customer service. Customer service.
And I know it sounds terrible. I like the people that I know. Sure. I like my family. I like some of my friends. But a lot of times, people can be hard to deal with. And the older I get, the less patience I seem to have for dealing with people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Yes. Well, also, you probably are in the very specific seat of having to be on with so many people, and that's got to be mentally taxing. My question was actually going to be, what's your favorite part of that journey? But honestly, how do you do it from going and being like your Law and Order basement guy to like on? And is that mentally taxing for you, or are you more of an extrovert that doesn't find a hard time switching between the two?
No, listen, the job is a blessing, to be clear. I know
absolutely
how blessed and fortunate I am, but you can't be, to your point, Holly, you can't be a jackass to anybody.
Nope.
They got their phones out and say, oh, see that Craig Melvin? You thought he was nice? No, that Craig Melvin's a jackass.
And you could have been having one moment like you stubbed your toe.
And who doesn't have a bad day?
Yeah.
So I try to keep all of my bad days in my house. And I remind myself frequently when I'm on the verge of being a jackass, I remind myself that I have a mortgage and 2 small children who enjoy eating and who like clothes.
Amen.
But to the other part of your question, my favorite part of the job, it's like broccoli and ice cream. Like I can go from, interviewing the president or the vice president, and the next thing you know, like this morning, I'm out on the plaza, like talking to Matthew McConaughey about how good UT is going to be this year, or I'm hanging out in the control room with 3rd graders because it was like, field trip day at the Today Show. So I get to do lots of really cool and interesting things and meet really cool and interesting people. And that so far, that hasn't gotten old.
I think that's amazing. Even though people, as we know, can sometimes be the worst, but they can be the best.
People, and that's the problem, Holly. There's no in between. Like, it's either like, oh, Holly, she sure was delightful. Oh, that Miguel, he was just, what a nice guy. He exceeded my expectations. It's either that end of the spectrum, or it's, oh, they are.
We hate you.
Yes.
People love you or they hate you. And you're like, we haven't met. But yes, no. It is that kind of a dichotomy. Oh,
Craig,
I don't envy that.
I'm sorry, Kelvin, go ahead.
I had a question, but I'm not even sure if Craig is allowed to really answer it.
I'm not allowed. There's no one standing over me with
contracts and NDAs.
I guess it does depend on the question, actually.
Yes. But Miguel brought up the morning show, and so I wonder if you've even watched the show itself.
I actually haven't. I'm not just saying that because I don't want to talk to you about it. I haven't seen the show. I caught a clip once, but I will say this: I was a bit annoyed by how bad they were at reading the teleprompter. Does that make sense? I know it seems like a small thing. I haven't watched the show, but I did see a clip when they rolled it out, and I was like, God, if you're going to be an actor, at least act like you read a teleprompter. That's my only takeaway. But I'm sure it's a delightful show.
I think it would be difficult to watch a show like that about your own profession, and it being so niche, you know what I mean? And then to see those little idiosyncrasies where you're like, they're not getting it right. And meanwhile, everyone's like, oh, we're just enjoying this drama. It would be like us watching some radio documentary. No one's wearing headphones. And we're like, stop it.
I hate
can't even get that part right. But
like that's the most basic of what we do is you wear headphones when you talk to people. So no, absolutely.
I get that. Yeah.
Although I'm not actually wearing headphones right now.
You don't have to wear the headphones.
You're fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
no, just us.
Yes. Don't you worry.
Put some on and pretend like I'm a radio guy.
That's fine.
I used to do a radio show.
Oh, did you?
Oh.
98.5 Kiss FM. It was a Sunday evening public affairs show. Clearly, by the looks on your faces, you never listened and you've never heard of it.
Well, what city was it in?
It was in Columbia, South Carolina, the capital.
Right.
I don't know.
I've never lived in South Carolina, so
98.5. It was called In Touch with Craig Melvin.
Oh,
it was the highest rated public affairs show on Sunday evenings in Columbia, South Carolina.
Look at that! How many
other public affairs shows were on Sunday evenings?
One.
Probably none. Just yours.
But you know what? It was the best damn one that Columbia has ever seen. They're like,
yes,
we can get that back.
Yes.
Now, Craig, I am curious, as people that are in the media, and things are changing so quickly when it comes to our society and how our listeners, how your viewers consume what we put out. As a person who's sitting on the national level, but then obviously locally here on WCNC, how do you see what you all do changing, or do you think it will? And will there always be an appetite for, that sort of programming when, our audiences and how they consume stuff is changing so much?
It's a great question. Yes, I think, I think we'll always be around. I think there'll always be a market for folks who traffic in truth and who tell stories and ask important questions and try to help people understand a very complicated world. That being said, we do have to reach people where they are. And when we were growing up, it was a lot easier to reach people where they were because you didn't have these. The internet wasn't what it is now. There were no podcasts. And so we've got to be a bit more creative and a bit more strategic. But I would contend that we probably started to do that a little earlier than a lot of other folks in our space. I mean, at the Today Show, we joke sometimes about how inescapable we are. There is a Today Show podcast. We're on Sirius XM channel 108. We call our streaming platform Today All Day. So you literally, if you watch the 4 hours that we put on live in the morning and you're like, you know what, that 4 hours I just had of Craig and Alan Hoda, no, I want more. We can provide almost 24-hour content. So listen, I think when we were growing up, the Today Show came on in the morning. It was on until 10, then 11, and then it went off the air. I think what you're going to continue to see is the Today Show on all day, on TikTok, which, it's on it, but not in the traditional sense. Do I think that people are going to watch, 2 hours on Instagram of the same show they watched that morning? No, but I do think, and we've already started to see it, they're going to watch the segments that they're into, wherever they get their news. But listen, some people, it's funny, Miguel, because I do think sometimes, I think some people are pretty quick to hasten the demise of traditional media. And if you look at history, the history of what we do, it's always changed. It's always evolved. I mean, whether it was from, AM to FM, and then from radio to TV, and then from TV to we've always figured it out. We've always found people where they are. The reality, and this is what I find promising, people are consuming more information and more entertainment than they ever have. Now, the good side of that is it's great for business. The bad side of that is we're probably dumber than we've ever been collectively as a society.
Couldn't have said it better.
And goodness, like the paradox that is. It's like, look at all this information available, but maybe that's part of the problem. It's all these people.
That is the problem.
Because there's too much. How do you sift through it all?
And not a lot of people have that sort of online literacy, even that they can say, oh, that's definitely fact and that's definitely not.
Well, Holly, I would contend to your point there. It's not the quantity of the information, it's the quality of the information. And unfortunately, we live in a time where a lot of folks are unable and unwilling to discern trusted news sites and folks who are sitting in their mom's basement pretending that the sky is not blue. And that's
correct.
And so, misinformation and disinformation are legitimate existential threats to our way of life. I mean, and that's not to sound not to sound wacky, but I actually believe that.
No, we go there all the time.
Oh,
and that's something that
about this on the podcast
actively makes me nervous for, even the way that we do our show has changed. We've talked about how in the past, like, when we would talk about, President Biden or President Trump or whatever, and just literally during Holly's segments go, here's what happened. If I would just make a sound in the background, someone would be like, see, they're liberal. And it's like, I was just pressing a button to transition the segments. Like it was just facts, but it's like, you can't even do that. And it just really makes me nervous about where we're going and how can we all just agree on the same set of facts so then we can make decisions from there. And so just seeing how you experience it from the national level is super fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I had a cable news show for a decade. And I had a show on MSNBC. It came on every day. And I've never been an opinion guy. I don't do perspective journalism, primarily because I don't really have a lot of opinions. Oh, you'd be surprised. My wife sometimes, it frustrates her to no end. She's like, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, I could do salmon. I could do chicken. I could do pasta. I'm really indifferent. And it's just kind of how I've always been to a certain extent. But when I did my cable news show, I was amazed. And people have gotten very bold. They'll on the street, they'll say, oh, come up and they'll say, Craig, I couldn't believe when I heard blah, blah, blah. I always knew you were one of those conservatives. And then I literally the next day, someone will send an email like, you're like the rest of them. You're limousine liberal and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then there was a woman was on the plaza a few months ago, and she's like, I'm glad that you left that cable show before everyone turned woke. And I said to her, it's like 8:30 in the morning. I was like, well, ma'am, when you say woke, what do you mean? What is woke? She couldn't give me a definition. I mean, I kept on moving down the line. But I mean, it's just, we use buzzwords and we like to label everyone. And the reality is, like, we're all kind of doing the same things. We're trying to do right by our kids. We're trying to do right by our health. We're trying not to embarrass our families. We're trying to keep a roof over our head. And we're trying to, I'd like to think, engage in legitimate, like, intellectual curiosity. And we're trying to have fun. Like, that's it. We're all doing the same things. But some people, this is you caught me on a rant day. I don't do a lot of
it. I'm here. Bring it to me. Give it.
I don't do a lot of ranting, but this has become one of my biggest pet peeves. When people will say, you know what? I hate that such and such. Every morning I watch him, or every evening I listen to her. And I'm like, if you hate someone so much, why are you listening to him? Why do you hate watch? Who does that?
I just ranted about this last week. You missed it. It was a great rant.
The January 6th comment.
Yes.
People do it. People love it.
I know. Why? Why do you do it?
I don't. Like, I even going back to Law and Order, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crimes, the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories. So you got your open there. In the first 2 minutes of a Law and Order episode, I can tell you what's going to happen because I've seen them all. and in my mind, I say sometimes, oh yeah, I like this one, I'm going to watch. If it's one of the episodes that I hate for a variety of reasons, there are a couple of the DAs that I didn't really enjoy over the course of the 24 seasons, I'll turn. I don't watch the whole Law and Order just to rail against Sam Waterston. No one does that.
Or do they?
Well, it's hard to hate DA Jack McCoy. I mean, he's a legend.
That's true.
All right, I know we've kept you longer than we're supposed to. I have one last question before we let you go, Craig. So obviously, you know, you've made it to the big leagues. Like that's where so many people in your industry say, I want to end up there. And so that comes with you get paid for what you're worth. What's that one thing that you've been able to do with working in such a big national stage that made you go, holy crap, I've made it. I was able to take this trip, to buy this thing, to help someone out. What was that thing that made you go, I truly freaking made it?
I shop at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong.
Still never been into a Whole Foods.
I mean, listen, I grew up shopping in Piggly Wigglies and Food Lions.
Yes.
So when I was able to go into a Whole Foods and actually like take stuff off the shelf and put it in my cart and basket and get to the front and not worry about whether my check had cleared, that's when I was like, hey, I can afford organic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some $20 chicken.
Yes. That was when I knew.
I love it.
Well, Craig, thank you so very much. We love seeing you on WCNC every morning on the Today Show. We have you on here in the studio, and thank you for what you do representing the Carolinas on the national stage. Thank you.
Hey, this has been fun. This was much better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, good.
Were you like, who's this local morning show?
People talk.
Radio gets a bad rap,
People
but
talk. They were like, Holly hasn't been the same since she got out of rehab, and Miguel after like the 4th DUI. We thought, kidding. I'm kidding. I hope I'm kidding. I don't know.
No,
Well,
some of the things. It's radio people, you know.
we're wacky.
Yeah, but we like to have serious conversations.
We do, and this is the place we love to do it because we can just be open and honest and just be ourselves. So thank you for being yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing this space for me to be myself. And I know this is where you hang up in my face and move on to your next subject.
Yeah, we'll just talk about you, and
say how
just
cool it was.
Yeah. So now you got to listen.
Oh.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, Craig. Bye.
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 That's so awesome.
Cool guy.
That went better than I thought it would. You never know. Like that's like a super famous person. You don't know.
Right. Well, and that's why you can tell just from the beginning, like how these sort of things are going to go, because, we have a partnership on Hits 96.1 with our NBC affiliate, WCNC Charlotte, which he is on. And so, these are things set up by people who don't do what we do every morning and do what he does every morning.
No, it's just it's like handlers or PR people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't know if like he's in the middle of like a crap storm, and then we have been in the middle of a crap storm, and like how both parties are gonna go, and if you're gonna be real. But I just really enjoyed his freshness because we have it on in studio, but I don't get to have all of the audio on, so I don't get to hear him speak.
Right.
I just see him on, and so being able to just get an essence and feel for like who he is, that was really cool.
I know. Like, how much did you love like him saying what every person in radio has said for decades, which is just like, if you don't listen, why? If you don't like it, why are you still listening?
Right.
Like
right.
he thinks it too. Like he's like, if you don't like the Today Show, why are you watching it?
Literally. Or like, I don't like people.
I don't like people. I'm not his PR person, but I was like, why are you saying this?
I was like,
but also
take it back. But also,
you're not wrong.
Right.
Like obviously, like us, like individuals, like you listening, and like the Platypus Posse and the Miguel and Holly fam. That's different than the general population of people. Like you think about the internet, and it's just all these billions of people with their opinions. Oh, awful.
And I love, especially if you watch the morning show, which if you haven't, it is just a brilliant show.
It's
on just so many different levels.
Almost too well written. Like sometimes it's a hard watch because it's so well done. I can't wait for it. It's coming back in what, October?
I'm not sure.
I think it's like October. It comes back soon.
I feel like it's this month, maybe.
Well, maybe September.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I felt like I have to look and see, but to me, like I always find let's see how do I phrase this. One of the things with the morning show that the themes that come across is like when you listen to our show, you as a listener, and there's literally no reason why you shouldn't assume this, you assume that the morning show, Miguel and Holly, that like basically we're the boss, that like we're the people that like run the station, or that we pick the music or we pick the promotions.
We're playing the music.
Right. And then like
with the song.
When you're behind the scenes, we literally have zero control. Like the only control we have, and even then it's not fully, is like when I press our microphones on and we get to talk on the air, that's what we control. Right. Nothing else. And even then that's a little like
and content, but again, that has a caveat.
Right.
Because yes, we run Miguel runs it through the filter of the content, but like then we have meetings about like what type of content are you choosing?
Right. 100%.
Is it this or is it that? Because if it's this, make it more that.
Yeah. Right. And so we don't have control. And so that's what for me, what was really fascinating about watching the morning show with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon is Jennifer Aniston was playing the character of like a Katie Couric or a Savannah Guthrie, who's been on a big morning show like the Today Show for decades.
Right.
And so you watching would think, oh, she runs the network or she makes big decisions, when literally she is the TV presenter. That's all. She doesn't have any control. But that's where some of the show takes place, and where I think this new season is going is about if you've been in that position. And there was one scene that like at that time when we watched it is when we were going through some stuff behind the scenes, and which is why it spoke to me, is when she was sitting in that boardroom and then she put her hand down and was like, I am America, or I own America, or something like to the effect of like, they've trusted my voice and they don't know who all you old rich white men who sit in a boardroom and make decisions. They don't know who the fuck y'all are. They trust my voice. And for me, that's always spoken. And what I thought was fascinating about that show and the power dynamic that you have at play, and sort of going into like us leaving our previous radio station and how like that has been a very bittersweet moment.
Yeah.
Because there's just some stuff that we cannot talk about and won't talk about just because you wouldn't do it, and on a public forum about personal things that happen behind the scenes. But there are some feelings of sadness of seeing something that you worked so hard to make successful. But then there's also a little tiny part of you that's like, because of stuff that happened behind the scenes, and there are some people that felt like we weren't as good as people think we are. And then when things don't work out the way after you leave, and then you're like,
That's interesting.
Well, I wasn't on contract, so I can talk all about it. Oh. I'm just kidding.
Somebody did ask me in my post that I made about that station, changing. They said, can we say that? I don't even know. Well, this is my point. Somebody goes, oh, guess that NDA's out of the way. And I said, no, sure not.
No. No. And even then, I would never say anything. And it's not like we
I'm
have
not trying to say anything untoward.
No. And I don't have any untoward feelings. It's just, it's
politics.
It's work. It's fun from what you see on the outside, but it's also work behind the scenes.
We work for a business, a company. And we've said that like when we used to work there. We said that in some of the first podcasts once we started back up here. This is a business. Like we all have fun, and I'm so glad that we have this platform, obviously. But at the end of the day, we work for a company.
Right.
Bottom line. And the company ultimately has the final say in the content we put out.
Yep.
100%.
So that it just is what it is, as much as we are open and honest with ourselves, there's obviously a line.
Right.
And I think that that, can't be sharing every single thing.
That's why talking to Craig is so interesting. And when he was like, do we get to cuss? And I'm like, I feel like in my mind, I'm like, they pay them, however many millions of dollars, to be on the Today Show, that they have like a moral clause where it's like, you have to always be Craig Melvin or Savannah Guthrie or Hoda wherever you go.
Yeah.
But I think there's also some autonomy that you get when you reach that level of they trust that you're not going to do anything to damage the Today Show brand,
right?
Or your personal brand, which is why I think, and this is, if we ever interviewed him again, because I feel like he's really like, if he wants to answer, he'll answer. If not, he won't be rude about it. He'll just be like, I really don't want to go there. But that whole drama that happened last year with the 2 Good Morning America anchors,
they may not be able to speak on that.
Right. They may be like, nah, that's, even though that's competition, that's,
but
we don't want to go there.
We don't, because like, think about it in our terms. Like, you never know when all of a sudden the gun's pointed back at you. You know what I mean? Like, we have been told in the past to like skewer our competition, use any weakness against them, drag them. And that's not really cool.
Right.
Because in the grand scheme of like the karma of this business, who knows when, all of a sudden you're the one behind, like up against the firing squad. And then you would hope, like, I just feel like we're decent people. I'm not trying to brag about, hey, look how great we are. But like, when we were given a directive to do that, we almost tried, and we're like, well, here's a thing that happened. You may have heard. That's sad. That's too bad. It's really. And then we're like, we're not going to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, and that's why I feel he may not be able to talk about it, about his competitors and what happened on Good Morning America. Because it's like almost like bad luck. You're almost like, you take that. It's a cheap shot. It's an easy, cheap shot to be like, haha, look what happened to my competitors. You just never know. And like, you don't want to be the person who ultimately was a dick first. Am I making any sense?
No, 100%.
I'm starting to talk in circles. So
did you like y'all's competitors? Because I feel like in South Florida, I liked mine. I was fans of them. And, my first opportunity in the radio business was an internship with Clear Channel, right the year they turned into iHeart. And so the people that moved on up after I left and went back to school and got my degree, took a few years to finally get into radio, they had moved up in their career. And so I worked with them. And so for me, like, they were down the street. So that's competition. But like, I never had any beef with, other radio personalities. Like, I don't know. I also am in like a later generation where I don't think that was kind of the thing. I feel like everybody supports each other on social media, but
it is different nowadays. Yeah. It's different nowadays. We were almost, again, I'm not trying to pump us up too much, but we were sort of the early adapters of, hey, can we just be cool with each other? Like, as elder millennials, we came up in the era of, you do skewer the enemy. I mean, foot on the neck, like, get them fired, make it so their kids can't eat.
Yeah. That's the type of radio that they wanted.
Yes.
I mean, remember we talked to Nikki on Monday, and that's because she grew up in Tampa and she worked for Tampa. She was trained under morning shows and producers to be like, that's what you do, is like, you attack and you attack and you attack. And Tampa radio back then was known. It was infamous in American radio.
Like, nationally known that like the radio wars were happening. I can't think of another city, bar maybe like actual New York City.
Right.
And I don't even know if then, like, but like the radio wars that took place, it was legendary. They were known for like the meanness and the spite and like the dirty tricks and all of this stuff. And
then we arrive and we're like, hey,
we're like we have a segment where we're gonna talk about everyone's good news. What's your good news? And like, we would just do that. And then we were just talk about what we talk about now. And we would have people call up ready to fight. They'd be like, I got something to say to Miguel. And Miguel be like, okay, what is it? And they'd be like, I didn't like what you said. And Miguel be like, okay, well, what didn't you like about it? And he'd be like, well, it's just that I think it's more like this. And Miguel was like, I can see how you would think that. Let me share my point of view. And then ultimately they'd get off the phone and be like, oh yeah, you know what? Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Right.
Thanks for listening.
It was a training process for the callers in Tampa because everybody was like
Guns
geared
blazing.
up, guns blazing to
Mhm.
fight with you, and we were like, "Hey, man, we're just
Yeah,
Thanks
talk
for
about it.
thanks for listening. What is your point of view?"
Like, what's going on with you? What's going on inside your brain right now?
And so that was weird. And as Nikki said, she was like, "I don't get it."
In Miami, down the hall, we had Trick and Trina
Oh, that
Trick Daddy.
Trick Daddy. I remember when that
during
thing
2020.
started.
And so lots of headlines, trending topics, lots of people were just, for lack of a better term, pooping on him. Yeah, good times. Good times. I felt like in hip hop radio, I feel like they're more geared, at least in South Florida. I don't know about the rest of the country, but in South Florida, like the competing stations, they would go off on each other.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I could never.
No, I know. And plus, I'm not that person. Like, I'm not a combative person. You know, like if someone's like, hey, let's argue. Because when I'm arguing, I'm not thinking clearly. And so I'm not able to make sound, reasonable,
Rational
arguments. Because then I'm just yelling. And I'm just saying, like, I think the last time I got mad at someone, this was like years and years ago, and it was like barbs back and forth. And I like the last thing I said was like, "You stupid head."
No, you didn't.
And I'm like,
well,
this is just not me. This is not who I am. This is not who I am.
And honestly, I'm not either. I mean, I literally told y'all I deleted the comment. I told you about the Instagram comment on Monday's podcast. I deleted it. Which again,
The
I feel
whole
like
thing. Did you said your comment? You said
rescinded my comment so that, by the way, there were over 100 comments underneath mine arguing or calling me names or telling me how fucking stupid I am.
Oh my god.
Jesus.
And uncultured and playing a victim and something having to be with my white woman privilege and all of this stuff. So I deleted it because you know what? Like, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm not as good at being insulting as you are. Y'all are better than that.
Right.
Than me at that.
Right.
And actually, I'm so thankful. I would not want to be a person that can deftly skewer someone and make them feel like shit about themselves.
Right.
And if you are good at that, hey man, more power to you, and good for you and your quick wit and your way with words and your ability to make other humans feel miserable. Like if that's something that you like to do and you've made yourself really good at, that's a skill.
Right.
I don't have that skill. I'm personally really glad that I don't, because I actively don't really like to make people feel bad about themselves. Like, do I get angry? Absolutely, I get angry. And I went off on that man the other day about, like, you know, whatever, because I was just angry. And did part of my stuff probably not even make sense? Sure.
Right.
Because like Miguel, I get angry and I stop making logical sense.
I'm just saying words that I think are hurtful.
I'm just shouting.
Was this your first time that you were like viral, like social media attacked?
No, there was the other time. The biggest first time was when I did that post on Instagram after January 6th, and I had the picture of the man stealing the podium with waving, and I was like, that's white privilege. That if you were curious about what privilege is, that's what it is. And I mean, that comment section was on fire.
Good Lord.
It lasted for days, but there was one good interaction that came of it, so I kind of like clung to that one. But everything else is terrible. And it really messed me up. But this was going on a week now. This comment was a week ago. And I woke up, I thought I deleted it last night. I woke up this morning and there was another comment saying terrible things about me. Oh, actually, well, let me get to that. So there's a comment saying terrible things, and I was like, I thought I deleted this shit. So I deleted it. I was like, get it out of here, because I made that comment a week ago. I'm over it.
Right. I moved on.
Very much.
People coming in the comments a week later to call me names, and I'm just trying to check and see if somebody saw my story and liked it. Like, too much. But it got to the point last night where it was like, it went viral. Like, we're talking about a viral thing where the literally people in other countries were commenting. And some man was like, oh, I have to call you out because in St. Petersburg, where you say you're living, I've looked at all the schools and you need to tell us this about this school and which school are you actually in? And do you live in an unincorporated part of Pinellas County? And I was like, I'm reporting you for stalking.
Mm-hmm.
Block.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It is. And the whole post, the entire post was not that serious.
Right.
Like, that's why in my post I said, go outside. Like, go outside. Put your phone down. Go outside.
Literally.
It's not that serious.
You got to be unemployed or miserable or possibly both to really go this hard about someone else's comment that you don't even know.
And the man might have lived in this area. Maybe he was like a listener that stumbled upon my comment. Maybe he wasn't at all. But I'm like, the fact that sir, you done too much and now you're getting blocked. And I did report.
That's what makes me think maybe I'm just lazy. Because there's just no universe where I would do that much research unless it was like trying to save someone's life.
Right.
Or a friend of mine was like, oh, my boyfriend cheated. Can you find? Then I'm going to be like, ooh, let me get my Google Maps out and try to get some coordinates. But for some random person's comment on Instagram, girl, I ain't got time for you. Bye.
That's what I'm saying. So anyway, I feel like we didn't really touch on our former radio station as much as we probably should have. But
I mean, there's that.
That's all we really can. I mean, It was sad. It was sad. We poured our everything into that station to make it what it was. And then we left. And then it stopped. So I feel sad about that. And a tiny, tiny, tiny little part was like, That's the wrap up.
I had nothing to say because, well, I wanted to say something, but I was like, I shouldn't. I was on that station with you guys for a little tiny bit, but I was like, you know what? I'm not really, this isn't for me. I was just there for a few months, so never mind. But
Kelvin's like, I left a lasting impact. And actually,
my name will go down in the annals of history.
I can't believe I was part of this history.
The reason why 101.5 changed in Tampa is because Kelvin left.
Yep.
Kelvin left.
Yep.
Kelvin live.
Those night numbers.
No longer live on that
I
station.
was doing pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Anyways.
Kelvin, how can people find you on social media?
TikTok, Twitter, Instagram at Kelvin Live.
Holly?
Radio Holly. And I mean, if you want to come and fire stuff at me, I'm just gonna block you. I'm blocking you.
Same.
My mental energy is already not well. I need to just preserve it. So.
I feel that. I feel like crying.
Oh.
Not now.
Do you cry?
No,
like,
not
you want to just let it out? You sure?
Well, maybe actually.
I mean,
if I could.
No, I already cried yesterday, but I might cry again later. I don't know. We'll see.
Do it up. Cry it up. Mine is Miguel Fuller. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Be Real everywhere. We will see you all on Friday. Bye.
Miguel and Holly Uncensored.
Catch it on the iHeart